because we really are concerned for our kids
Mm-hmm.
and we want them to do well. And when they are struggling at school, that's a really difficult time for us.
Welcome to the Teenage Kicks podcast, where we take the fear out of parenting or becoming a teenager. I'm Helen Wills, and every week I talk to someone who had a difficult time in the teenage years, but came out the other side in a good place and has insight to offer to parents and young people who might be going through the same. I'm delighted today to have Explore Learning as my sponsor for this episode. If you have a teenager, it's pretty much inevitable that you're going to come up against some exam stress at some point. And it's quite possible you've considered getting a tutor for your child. If that's something you're wondering about, then this is the episode for you. I'm talking to Carey Ann Dodah from Explore Learning, a maths and English tuition company providing both in-centre and online tuition for children aged 4 to 16. Carey Ann has more than 20 years in education, and I'm going to ask her to give us her best tips for effective study strategies, online learning tips, and how to navigate educational challenges when we're worried. She's also been a school governor, the chair of the PTA, and has 2 teenagers of her own, so she gets it. Carey Ann, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, it's really good to see you. We have talked about exam stress previously because it's something that comes up all the time, so we will probably talk about that. But one of the things that I see in my kind of online communities and people talk to me about on social media quite frequently is the question of tutoring, whether it's online or in person. It happens, most weeks somebody in one of my Facebook groups will say, oh, this is happening, my child's only getting a C, or my child's GPA for getting into sixth form or college is too low, and is it too late to get a tutor? So I'm going to ask you all those sorts of questions because it's quite stressful. I remember wondering this about my own children and feeling quite stressed and not knowing where to begin. So I'm hoping you're going to shed some light. But before we do that, as is the tradition on this podcast with all of my guests, I'd love to know about your teenage years. What was it like growing up for you?
Teenage time for me was actually a really positive time. I think I loved school. I really thrived in that structure, and I had a great rapport with my teachers, and I wanted to do well. So
wow,
I was probably I was head girl. I was one of those students that took on the responsibilities, and I was very driven.
Yeah, well, it makes sense why you've ended up in the job that you've got.
Yeah,
and you've been a governor and the chair of the PTA. You just love school, basically.
I guess I think I had a truly inspirational head teacher.
Oh.
And he is somebody that I've stayed in contact with, and he passed away recently. And he was made a huge impact, not just on me, but on a whole generation of people that went through the school that I went to. But his philosophy was that we should want to enter the world and make a difference. And it sat with me so strongly that everything that I have sought to do from school onwards is to always question, am I making a difference? Am I doing something positive with my skills that can benefit the community that I'm in? He was always saying that if something is wrong, don't sit back and just look at it and let it happen. Then question, well, what can I do to be a part of this? And that's inspired me in all aspects of my life, really. And it is definitely why I had a great school experience. Is very much thanks to his leadership.
Well, that sounds amazing. He sounds amazing. And
his name was Andy Thompson. So just to put it out there for those that might have known him too.
We salute you. You've done a great job. And a lot of people will say that not necessarily a head teacher, but it was a teacher that really helped them be who they were, get through school, inspired them. And that's the power that teachers have, right? They're just everything to some kids.
Yeah, teaching is an incredibly important and meaningful and powerful position to be in. And for some kids, all it takes is one person along their journey to have a connection that goes beyond perhaps the normal teacher-pupil conversation, somebody that just seems to be a real champion of theirs. And that's the catalyst that can set them off on a different trajectory.
Yeah.
And that can be really hard as a parent, because you think, well, why am I not that person? Maybe,
right.
But I think that having somebody external from your family space, especially when it comes to learning, has a very different impact on your child. And as you know, I have lots of experience tutoring. Did I have a good time during lockdown tutoring my then year 7 daughter? No, It was horrendous. I mean, to the point that she decided she wanted to report me to her father, because she decided that he must be the head teacher in this circumstance, and I was her teacher.
All sorts of issues there.
I know the complexity. That I was not a good teacher, and she did not want to have lessons with me anymore.
Funny.
I think that we don't have to be the master of everything as a parent. That's what I told myself. That you can be a great tutor to other children, because you haven't got all this emotional baggage that unfortunately we tie up with being a parent. Because we really are concerned for our kids, and we want them to do well. And when they are struggling at school, that's a really difficult time for us to know what to do for the best. And we feel that we should have all of the answers.
Right.
And we feel that we should be in the position to be able to coach them through, whether it's that science that they're not understanding, or their maths, or their English, and that we should be the one to provide all of that. But we don't have to be. And actually, having tuition as part of our toolkit as a parent can be really powerful and really relieving, because you're putting your children in the hands of somebody that has got experience of building a rapport with a child on a different level. They're able to be a role model, and they're able to be inspiring, and they haven't got any judgments or sometimes knowledge of their history or expectations.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and I am myself completely included in this, our expectations of our children then blur our ability to really be the best kind of support for them.
Yes.
So yes, being a tutor, finding a tutor that can be that external support is actually really beneficial to both you and your child, and gives them an opportunity and to find maybe their champion.
Oh, I love how you've just brought that full circle back to the inspiring teacher message. That is, I mean, my son's got a teacher like that, and I never had it. There is no geography in our genes. There's nothing that we've ever shown an interest in geography in our family and our wider family, but he absolutely adores geography. And it was such a shock to us, because we're like, what, really? What? We can't help you with that. We know nothing about geography. How's that going to work? And it's because of one teacher who adores his subject so much. My son's not the only one that's inspired. All his class are lucky to have him as their teacher, and they're so inspired to learn more about the natural world because of this great teacher who's built a rapport with students, exactly as you say, in a different way to how a parent can, because we come with our expectations, but we also come with a knowledge of our child's foibles, and the history of them dumping all of the worst parts of themselves on us for the entirety of their lifetimes, and this is no disrespect to teenagers, because every single one of us, including me, has a worst part. So kids, if you're listening, they don't listen, but if they ever do, yes, your mum is not perfect, even though she tries to pretend that she is. And so we've got that sort of, it's like an ingrained response that we have to our children sometimes, because we've learned it on a almost on a biological level, because we've grown up with them for so many years and we know so much about them that they wish we didn't know, and that doesn't work for them anymore. We know what they were like when they were 2 and now they're 16, and we're still behaving like that. So I totally get what you're saying, and you've actually answered one of the questions I was going to ask you, which was, why is it worth getting a tutor at all? That's why.
I really think that it shouldn't be something we see as a failing in our parenting,
right,
to consider tuition, just as we would need maybe at times medical advice or any other support if we wanted our children to develop their skills in music or dance or art. We wouldn't necessarily think, well, I should be the one to.
They definitely wouldn't learn dance from me.
For me, the same extends exactly to education. In the same way, because we might have done art at school, but that doesn't necessarily make us the expert now. And sadly, as we know, if you've tried to look at some of your children's homework, a lot of the methods that we thought were perfectly adequate so many decades ago don't seem to be the same anymore. So, we're
absolutely.
Also...
I remember trying to help one of my kids with long division. And I was like, I know how to do this. And so I showed them how to do long division the way I know it. And they just looked at me like I was from a different planet. Like, what are you doing? What, there's a different way to do long division?
Yes. So for all those reasons, we should see it as a tool that can help us and can really reduce some of that parental stress that we take on, that burden that we have.
Absolutely. And I guess that's one of the first moments at which, as a parent, we have to learn to step away from our responsibilities for our children. And this is something that I bang on about a lot, because I think it's the hardest part of creating an adult who's independent, is when they go from needing us to tell them what to do and guide them on every single thing and keep them safe, to not needing us at all. And we have to get used to giving up that level of, I will call it control, because we do have control over them to begin with. It's very, very hard to let that go when we're so used to needing to protect them and make sure they have the best possible life. Maybe this is the first point at which we have to say, this is not my job, and I have to trust him or her to do his or her best with the help of a different person.
Yeah, absolutely. And we put that help in their path. That is part of our control, as it were. But, we're having that say still in their education and their journey. But yes, what they choose to take out from that experience is then in their court. And that is also something that is very important for the next stages ahead of them, whatever journey they decide to go down. Because when they're at college or university or an apprenticeship, and the expectation is on them to learn as an independent individual, they really need to know where to start with that. And if we've done too much hand-holding and always being there and available, and they think that we've always got the answers, then they're not necessarily going to look for the other people that can help them.
And self-resource. Yeah, exactly. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you, so you only tutor, am I right, in maths and English? What's so important about maths and English?
Yeah, the reason we decided to focus on maths and English, and when we started Explore, we worked actually with younger children, so it was really more primary that we focused on initially, and it's really because we felt that those two subjects open up the rest of the world of learning. Really, if you can have a really strong foundation in reading and writing and basic understanding of numbers and number manipulation, then that gives you a platform to access everything else, really, beyond that, because all your humanities, your sciences, they require that strong foundation. And we've continued with that philosophy because I think it's something that then, we knew we did really well, and that it is a core that then those students can use to go, and once they need to specialize and go beyond, then they've got that platform to do so.
Yeah, I totally get that, because when our kids are in primary school, the majority of what they do is based maths and English. It's reading, writing, doing mental maths, as my kids call it. I've always seen that kind of maths as sort of almost as brain training, just to have an agile brain. And then right through to GCSE, my son doing his physics exam said to me something about, well, physics is fine because it's just maths at the end of the day. There's a few concepts in there and they give you some equations, but the rest of it is just making your brain do maths. And I'd never thought about it like that. But yeah, and probably with science, with chemistry as well, there's maths in there because you've got to figure out what goes with what, and it's mathematical thinking. And apparently music and maths. My nephew teaches music and maths, which I thought was a really weird combo, but apparently music's very mathematical.
Yes, yeah. And my daughter actually is looking to study both of those at college, because for sixth form she wants to do music, maths, further maths and physics.
Right, yeah.
But they obviously do, there is a logical kind of thinking that I think connects all of them. And I think what you've touched on there, Helen, as well, is just, it's really about our approach to learning and our attitude towards it. And if we can help children to unlock a bit of that joy and enthusiasm for, recognizing the good feeling that you get when you start to unlock something new, something that's been unclear or problematic, and you start to unravel kind of and find the building blocks that help you find success in that area. That's something that our tutors work a lot on instilling, this really great learning habits, because if we can teach children that you can master any of these core skills, then you know in yourself that you can apply that to learning anything in the future. It's really the principle of having that attitude of, I can't do it yet. Not that, not this kind of closed mindset of, I've got a fixed intelligence, I only know this amount. We really work hard with children to help them to see that isn't true. We can all unlock all the information in the world. It takes different levels of commitment and different amount of resilience, for different children.
Yeah, and different ways of looking at it, I'm imagining, because I do remember one particular time during lockdown when my daughter, she must have been doing GCSE maths at the time, was really struggling with something. And we've got quite a good WhatsApp group as a family. And I think she must have mentioned this. And my nephew said, oh, I'm happy to talk you through that if you want. And I was sort of mulling around in the kitchen as they were on a Zoom call together. And a couple of times he's such a good teacher, I can tell, because he makes kids laugh, but he gets through to them. And a couple of times I was like, well, I don't understand it, but it's GCSE maths, so why would I? But she was like, no, I sort of know what you're saying, but still, it's not clicking. I don't really get it. And he tried 3 different ways to explain it to her. And he wasn't fazed. He was just kind of, okay, all right, so let's look at it from a different angle and try it a different way. And the third time she was like, oh, right, I get it. Is that what your tutors are like? You just keep experimenting until you find the thing that works for that child?
Absolutely. And that's the magic. That's the magic of tutoring, is sort of being able to have that time and that patience and space to go through that with an individual child.
Yeah.
Sadly, I would want that for every child. And that's the utopia of education. You would really want every child to have that very personalized, very tailored and timely education. But it unfortunately isn't possible in our current education system. So being able to have those moments outside of school, through supplementary education, through tutoring, then allows you to just progress those children that little bit further, that little bit faster than they're able to do in the current school setting.
And even maybe just clear a particular blockage that then allows them to continue and do better than in their normal classes.
Yes, absolutely. And once they've overcome that hurdle, that helps them build their confidence. And confidence is such an underrated thing. It's one of the things that most parents say within the first couple of weeks of starting with Explore Learning. It's the main comment that we get is, I've really seen a change in their confidence.
Right.
And that's so powerful, because that applies to how they then see that subject at school, and perhaps how they see other learning in general. So, we really feel like that's the key. If you can just help a child feel that, no, it's not hopeless. Maths isn't hopeless. You're not hopeless. You can find, and we can help you find the ways to unlock those elements that you're not understanding and build on that.
Make it make sense to you.
Yeah.
Is it ever too late to get a tutor? Because what I see quite a lot of is in the run up to exams, when mocks weren't as good as parents and kids thought, and the child is starting to really knuckle down, but has maybe not done enough groundwork previously, or there is a block. I see people, someone once said 3 weeks before a maths GCSE, I really think my child should have a tutor, because I'm really panicking that he's not going to get what he needs in his maths. Is that too late? Is it ever too late?
I think it's not too late. We just have to manage our expectations of what we hope to achieve during that time. Because tutors aren't miracle workers, and if a child has struggled for a long time, and we've only given them a short number of weeks, there's only so much that they can cover and unlock. However, sometimes in that run up to the exams, students are getting blockages because of stress and overwhelm. And the information is there, they're just struggling to access it because their brains are too busy, too consumed with and it is very overwhelming, the number of exams that they have to sit in a very short period of time. What a tutor can do is to help calm that and to help direct that thinking back to the information that they do actually know. They can help them see that, no, but you do know this. Look, it's there. You've been able to answer that question. And they can help them think about the right steps to take in those weeks coming up, to keep calm, to be able to answer questions in the best possible way. And they can talk them through exam technique and those little things that can make the biggest difference actually on the day. But what they can't do in those 3 weeks is to help teach new concepts that a child hasn't fully understood before. Because when we're into that whole revision time, it really should be all about revisiting, re-seeing something that you've already learnt, not having to start from scratch on any areas.
So I think what you're telling me is that there's never a bad time to get a tutor, and actually just because they're English and maths tutors, it doesn't mean that they can't just help with overall approach to revision and exam stress. And we do have a couple of episodes on exam stress and how parents can help, which I'll link to as well.
Oh, lovely.
But so at what point, I do see a lot of parents worrying and not knowing whether they should get a tutor. And I think most of the time they're really just panicking that their kids aren't keeping up with what they think the whole class is doing, what they think is necessary. And it's a real difficult one to avoid getting sucked into, but my child needs all 9s at GCSE and all A stars and needs to be permanently getting the top grades, but to be worth anything. And we all, we don't all know. Most of us know that's not true, but it's very easy to panic when our child's maybe getting some C's or some 6s and think, gosh, are they actually going to make it to the thing they want next, which is the college place or the sixth form place? At what point should we, you might not even be able to say, at what point should we, or what should we do about those anxieties before we decide, do you know what, a tutor's the right thing? How do we know that a tutor's the right thing?
Okay. I think there's a few bits I want to kind of unpick with that. But firstly, tuition doesn't just need to be about getting a better grade. As I think we've sort of alluded to, there's so much more that can happen in that positive kind of role modeling relationship. And one of the things that I love about the relationship actually my daughter has with her tutor is that she's a role model. She's already at university. She's doing a degree. She's kind of gone through some of that journey that my daughter has coming up in the next few years. It's really nice, I think, for her to see someone that's just quite close in age, but just that step ahead. And for her to think, I can see how I can follow that trajectory. So I think there's the connection and the role modeling. I think that if you and your child feel like there's more that they would like to be getting out of their learning, then this is a really great time to be discussing it. Sometimes it's a one-sided thing. You might think that they need more and they might think, no, I'm absolutely fine.
I'm happy.
I don't need anything else.
Good point.
But you do know your child, you know your child better than anyone. And I'm sure you do really know what they're capable of. But it does need to be a mutual decision, especially with our teenagers, because if they're not bought into having additional support, they're not going to get the most out of it. And you could be throwing your money at something that you feel is then not really giving you the desired results. At the teenage stage, more than ever, it needs to be an agreement between both of you that this is something that's worthwhile and worth you trying. And there's no harm in ever trying anything, right? As an intervention, if it's something you're considering, give it a go. And does it make a difference? Does it help your child feel more calm, more confident? You're not tied in to your decisions, so you could just try it out for a few weeks and see how that fits with family life, with the studies, and does it make a difference? And then I think from there you can then decide whether to carry forward or not.
Yeah, well, you've touched on one of the questions I was going to ask is if there ever a reason not to have a tutor. And I guess as you say, with teenagers, if they're not engaged and they're not up for it, that would be a really good reason not to have a tutor.
Yeah, because you'd be investing in something that you're not going to really see the benefit from. It's not going to be a happy time for your teen or for the tutor, really, if they don't want to be there. However, there are some great people, like we said, that you might not be able to connect with them, or maybe they've not found that connection with a teacher, but they might find that connection with somebody else that's not in school, doesn't know their history, doesn't think of them as having a reputation that precedes them. Because unfortunately that does happen in our schools. And I know our teachers are really passionate about making a difference to every child, but it can, inevitably follow kids along if they've historically been disruptive or not very engaged in a class. You maybe just need a fresh pair of eyes with no history that comes to this child with a different agenda. And that can make the difference. So I think it's still worth giving a go, even if you feel like this maybe isn't going to work in the long term. I guess you just never know until you try it.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just wondering, I imagine that it's a good idea to try a few tutors to see, like you would on a dating app, just to see if you click and if you get that relationship that is going to help your teenager.
Yeah. I think we're finding more and more people, there's more options certainly now than there ever have been. And online has opened that up vastly because, if we think back to when we were our teen selves, and if we had sought out tutoring, really the only solutions we would have been looking at are often retired teachers or teachers in our local area who might come to your home or, do something one-to-one. There weren't really any group tutoring or anything like that going on at that time. And the options that we have available to us now are vastly greater. And there are online tutors, there are tuition centres, and we're at the cusp of the advent of the AI tutor, which is a whole other conversation. But, sticking with humans for now, I think that we can shop around a lot more. There's certainly a lot more profiles we can look at and people we can connect to. And that in itself can be quite overwhelming because, again, it's making you maybe feel responsible, like I've got to choose my right tutor. How do I get it right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's something that Explore, we've decided not to go down that route. So you don't choose your tutor, you choose Explore, and then we pair you with that tutor. And obviously, it depending on the setting. If you're doing one-to-one online, that will be the same tutor. If you're coming into one of our education centres, it will be a variety of tutors that will be supporting you. And then that's really about trusting us and trusting our experience of recruiting and finding the very best people and training them, rather than it being more of a potluck marketplace. Obviously, I'm biased to this, but I also do feel that it should be something that we take responsibility for, ensuring that you have the best people, rather than just allowing you to choose from tutors that maybe haven't been vetted in quite that same way.
Yeah, I really liked it when you said that, because I know what you mean about the overwhelm. If you're given a massive pool of choice, how would you ever know that you were getting it right? And I was going to ask you, what should we be looking for when we're choosing a tutor? But I'm minded to sway more to how, with your model, how do you match kids to a tutor?
Really, it's about thinking about that individual child's needs. Do they have special educational needs? Are they, what are their particular interests? And it's really about finding the kind of energy levels of a tutor that we feel would match with that.
Right. So do we fill in some kind of a form to say this is what we're struggling with, this is what my child's like?
It's more a part with initial conversation,
right.
and a free trial session where you'll discuss your particular needs. And then it's really a case of us and our managers knowing all of their tutors very well, knowing kind of who's going to fit best. And that might not always be the perfect fit from the start. And then obviously there's opportunity to feed that back and find the right people. But we pride ourselves on always having very good systems of support for our tutors so that we can make them the very best that they can be, so that they can support all the children that they work with. And there's feedback mechanisms for them as well to be able to say, I'm struggling to support this child with this aspect of their maybe of their behaviour or of what they need out of a session, so that we can be on hand to support that as well.
So it sounds quite joined up and quite personal. So if I've got this right, you would have a conversation with the child and their parent to begin with, and then allocate the tutor that you think fits them best, and then that's reviewed, and that tutor has kind of almost like supervision and an ability to check in.
Yes, very much. Slightly different in a centre model, because in our centres, then you're bringing your child in at a certain time each week. There'll be a bank of tutors that are working at that time, and they will be the regular people that your child will see when they come in. A bit again, different environments work for different children. Some children thrive on having one-to-one and having and being in the comfort of their own home, and so experiencing that tuition online. Other children actually need to be in a physical learning space, and they prefer to be outside of their home. Like maybe their home is not where they want to learn, and they need that physical removal. And having a learning space. And our learning spaces are really different and dynamic, and they're not school. So they're somewhere that children can come in and feel that there's a lot going on. There's other kids, different ages, but they're also somewhat anonymous. There's not the sense of, you're in this group, sitting on this table because you're doing this level work. Nobody knows anything about what level anybody's working at. And that can be very refreshing for students. And sometimes they can really thrive on just that motivation of I'm not the only one. There's not a stigma. Nobody's kind of feeling embarrassed to be coming into this space. This is something that we're all doing and we've all got in common. That's pretty special too.
Loads of people need to do extra work outside of school. I get what you're saying about being in a different place, because one of the questions I was going to ask is online versus in-person tutoring worse or better? Because I guess there may be a perception that by seeing a tutor online, you're getting second best because you're not with that person in real time. And I don't know why I'm still thinking that way, on the basis that we've been doing most of our work meetings online for the last 3 years through necessity, and it's been fine. And you've just pointed out that for some kids, it's actually better. And my daughter had this issue when she was doing revision. She could not revise at home because home had the option to put Friends on her laptop rather than work, and home had the kitchen where she might distract herself with some baking or snacking. So she had to go to the library. She went to the university library when she was revising for her A-levels, because there was distractions there. It was a social thing as well. Everyone was there, but she just could get more work done outside of the home setting, which I found really interesting.
So it's really down to the individual and what works for them. And it's wonderful that we have the opportunity and that the tech is so forward now that we can have, really brilliant live streaming, and that those conversations can be very natural and organic online, rather than it being something that, your bandwidth's not allowing you to have. Hopefully, as long as there's no technical issues, then that conversation can be as natural as being in person. But it is different for some children. Especially I find with younger children that having a physical person there in their space has a very different impact for them in terms of their concentration and their desire to kind of keep going. As our teens, they're more resilient to longer periods of attention and studying.
Sometimes.
Depending on the content.
Not when there are hash browns in an oven downstairs.
Yeah. So, but yeah, again, like with your daughter, sometimes just being in a more social space where other people are learning.
Yes, yeah.
Makes it feel less lonely and just makes, as I said, we really don't want there to be a stigma for kids feeling like this is a problem or there's something wrong with me because I need this extra support. It's really not the case. It's just this is another avenue to enhance your learning and
a different way of understanding, as we described. And so Explore Learning, you have centres if somebody wanted in-person tutoring. You have centres all over the UK, right? How many centres do you have?
We've got 95 centres throughout the UK, and they really are from Aberdeen through down to Southampton and in Wales and all in between. So that's an opportunity for people to come into the centre space, and if there isn't one nearby, then we have our online service that's available throughout the UK.
Yeah,
and all our tutors are British tutors, and they're all tutoring from within the UK. And they're all experienced within the British curriculum, which is, I know, another question that's out there with the now opening up of tuition from online. Then there is the opportunity that you could be tutored from tutors that come from abroad, but that's not something that we do.
So they know the national curriculum in the UK, so they're teaching the stuff that they know what they're going to be tested on in exams.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so their knowledge is current and appropriate to the exams that they're supporting.
Yeah. Are there any other questions that you get asked a lot? You must have a FAQ section, I guess, on your website. What else gets asked a lot?
We get asked about our support for special educational needs. I think that's obviously parents often are concerned about that. My argument on that is that every child is unique. Every child works differently, and we work with many children with varying needs, and we work hard to find what suits them best. And for a lot of children, whether they are dyslexic or on the spectrum with autism or dyscalculia, there's lots of different needs, but we just approach each child as an individual and where are they at right now and where would they like to be and what is the kind of outcome that they're looking for. And then we can advise whether our settings, whether our online or in centre or our tutors are best placed to support them with that. And hopefully give parents a very honest idea of what support we can offer. Similarly with students that are being homeschooled and helping parents get the balance with homeschooling and supported learning, then Explore is available to help with that too.
Yeah.
So I think the beauty of our approach is it's very individualized, and the curriculum that we use is a smart learning tool that is always adapting to the students' answers. So we're able to give immediate feedback and we're able to quickly adapt to each child's learning style in a way that previous kind of old style kind of marking and tutoring would be a much more delayed kind of process. So it's lovely when you know that every child is working on their own program of work that's at the right pace and level for them.
Yeah. And that's what makes it so different to what goes on in schools. The best will in the world. It can't be personalised.
we're not teaching as groups. We're not teaching we're not teaching by age or ability. We're really taking each child as where they are at right now. And that for both parent and child can be really refreshing. And to not feel that they've got to categorize themselves, which is kind of, which is hard on a lot of kids.
It's hard for all of us, isn't it? And I mean, that's how we're taught to operate. Carey Ann, thank you so much. It's been really interesting. Can you just, I will put the link in the show notes for anybody that's listening, just to go down and click afterwards. But can you just say what the website address is for anyone that's listening?
Yes, we're explorelearning.co.uk.
Very easy. And that's where you go to find out about pricing, I guess. And
yes, pricing and booking in a free session. So that's the best way of trying out Explore is to book a free trial. Mm-hmm. You can choose to do that online, or you can come in person in a local centre to do that. And we would love to see you, and just to show you really how that all works. No expectation that you need to join. It's really just an opportunity for you to find out more. And then you can take it from there.
Amazing. Thank you so much. It's been really interesting. And all kudos to your old head teacher. What a legend. He's developed. Did he know that you got to this point after his education?
Yeah, no, he did. And it's I would hope that that's something that he could take forward, knowing that, and many of his students have gone into education.
Amazing.
Many of his students are head teachers themselves now. So
fantastic.
Obviously had some real magic.
Yeah. Seek out the teacher who inspires you and create a relationship with them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Helen.
Thank you so much for listening. I really do appreciate it. Thank you too to everyone who's already rated and reviewed the podcast. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Amazon, it would mean the world to me if you could leave a review. It really helps get the word out, as well as making me very happy to read what you have to say. If this episode strikes a chord for you, please share it with anyone else you know who might be in the same boat, and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. If you have a story or a suggestion for something you'd like to see covered on the podcast, you can email me at teenagekickspodcast@gmail.com or message me on Instagram. I am Helen Wills. I love hearing from all my listeners. It really makes a difference to me on this journey. See you next week when I'll be chatting to another brilliant guest about the highs and lows of parenting teens. Bye for now.